Hey there, my name is Allie Ernest. I'm a science fiction and fantasy author. Welcome back to my channel where I'm diving into my top 10 fantasy series of all time. And let me caveat, some of them are actually one-off books. They're not the entire series because I maybe didn't like all the series. Or two, I chose the entire series because I couldn't choose one book, one or the other. So this was a really hard thing to do. It's like choosing between children, and if you read, which you probably do since you're watching this video, you find it just as hard as I did to figure it out. So I'm going to go over how I chose my list and kind of give you the things I took into account, I guess. And yeah, I even made a chart to go with it. And I'm not a chart person, but I decided I really needed a chart and do some math with it because I was just going off feeling, and I just wasn't very very measurable, I guess I would say. So anyway, I took the 10 most emotionally impactful books on me that I felt like would be in the top 10 regardless of what they scored. And so then I ranked them by that. And so I'm going to put on the screen kind of how I ranked them and how I kind of came up with the numbers and what order they're actually going to go in. So if you see on the screen here, I blocked off the books themselves, but I did have the books along the left, and each column was a different category. You had the main characters, and that was basically how I felt about the main characters. Did I absolutely love them, would die for them, or did I like them, but like, they weren't my favorite out of the other ones. But if I were to choose them against something that wasn't on the list, they would totally win out, if that makes sense. So 1 would be the very, very best, the ones I would die for in a heartbeat, and 10 would be like, I liked them enough. In relation to the other books on this list, that's why I ranked them 1 through 10, if that makes sense. Then I had the plot. Did the plot intrigue me? Was it keeping me going? Was it fast-paced? Was it slow-paced? Was it paced well? Or maybe the plot was predictable. That might have put it lower down on the list. If it had lots of plot twists and turns I wasn't expecting, but I loved that. We definitely got higher on the list in the rankings there. The next one was world. How inventive was the world? How invested was I in it? And how much did I love the magic system that's also included in the world? Maybe at some point I need to make a magic system column. Too late. And the last column was the reread, and it'd be which order would I reread them if I had to reread them now. And some of them, actually, there's one on the list I'm currently doing a reread of, so I think that's kind of funny, but it's cool. And the last column was the totals or the averages of those, and so I just ranked them by that, and 2 of them actually tied, so I'm going to put one before the other just because, why not? But 2 of them did get a 7 average, which both great books. But it was kind of funny, both of the 7 ones are in a similar world. I think that was interesting to me. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started with our list, shall we? So at number 10, we have Aragon by Christopher Paolini. This was one of my favorites when I was a kid, and I absolutely loved it. Tore through it. I didn't like the last book as much, and I'm not going to go into it in this video, but I wasn't satisfied with how the series ended and the character choices and the way things were wrapped up. But first book in the series is fantastic. So I'm going to put on the screen the little back cover blurb that's actually on Amazon to kind of get you interested and kind of see if you would like to read this if you have not read it. It's been around for a very long time, but one of my top favorite series. When 15-year-old Aragon finds a polished blue stone in the forest, he thinks it is the lucky discovery of a poor farm boy. But when the stone brings a dragon hatchling, Aragon soon realizes he has stumbled upon a legacy nearly as old as the Empire itself. Overnight, his simple life is shattered, and gifted with only an ancient sword, a loyal dragon, and sage advice from an old storyteller, Aragon is soon swept into a dangerous tapestry of magic, glory, and power. Now his choices could save or destroy the Empire. Okay, number 9 is City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. This was a new read for me this year. I'd actually had it on my shelf for a while. I gushed about it on Instagram this year. I loved it so very much. So much. This one is a Middle Eastern fantasy. It reminded me of Aladdin at first, but it's definitely not an Aladdin retelling. It just had a magic carpet and then had a genie-like character, which I was like, oh, it's Aladdin, but it's definitely not that. Let me read you the little blurb here. On the streets of 18th century Cairo, Nari is a con woman of unsurpassed skill. She makes her living swindling Ottoman nobles, hoping to one day earn enough to change her fortunes. But when Nari accidentally summons Dara, an equally sly, darkly mysterious jinn warrior, during one of her cons, she learns that even the cleverest of schemes can have deadly consequences. Forced to flee Cairo, Dara and Nari journey together across hot, windswept sands teeming with creatures of fire and rivers where the mythical Marids sleep, past ruins of once magnificent human metropolises and mountains where the circling birds of prey are more than what they seem, to Daevabad, the legendary city of brass. It's a city steeped in magic and fire where blood can be as dangerous as any spell. A city where old resentments run deep and the royal court rules with a tenuous grip. A city to which Nari is irrevocably bound, and where her very presence threatens to ignite a war that has been simmering for centuries. Number 8 is a nostalgic old favorite. It is the Song of the Lioness Quartet by Tamara Pierce. I adored this series in high school when I first read it, and I still adore it now. I do reread it, and I do have them all in audiobook. I love them so stinking much. So I'm just going to read you the back of the box set because it kind of gives an overview of the quartet itself and kind of the inciting incidents, stuff like that. Fearless, bold, athletic, magical, young Alana of Trebond is all of these things, and more than anything else, she has always craved the adventure and daring allowed only to boys. She and her twin brother Tom switch places. Tom heads for the convent to become a sorcerer, and Alana, pretending to be a boy, is off to the castle of King Roald to begin her journey to knighthood. Filled with swords and sorcery, exploits and intrigue, good and evil, Alana's quest for knighthood launches the epic adventures of Tortall's heroes. Coming at number 7, this is the one that was tied. One of the ones was tied was Daughter of the Forest by Juliette Marillier. I had trouble choosing between Daughter of the Forest and Wildwood Dancing, one of her other books. That's also one of my other favorites. Wildwood Dancing is probably at number 11. And I ended up choosing Daughter of the Forest because it was more of a recent read, and in comparison between the two, Wildwood Dancing is a young adult and Daughter of the Forest is an adult, and I preferred the adult version of it. It's a retelling of The Six of Swans, which is an old fairy tale, and I really liked how Juliette Marillier really took this fairy tale and twisted it and created this whole story. It has an enemies to lovers romance and historical background, even though it's historical fantasy, but the historical background was ancient Ireland and ancient Britain has always fascinated me, so this one's just like, it was the perfect storm in a sense. Lovely Sorcia is the 7th child and only daughter of Lord Colum of Seven Waters. Bereft of a mother, she is comforted by her 6 brothers who love and protect her. Sorcia is the light of their lives. They are determined that she only know contentment. But Sorcia's joy is shattered when her father is bewitched by his new wife, an evil enchantress who binds her brothers with a terrible spell. A spell which only Sorcia can break by staying silent. If she speaks before she completes the quest set to her by the fair folk and their queen, the Lady of the Forest, she will lose her brothers forever. When Sorcia is kidnapped by the enemies of Seven Waters and taken to a foreign land, she is torn between the desire to save her beloved brothers and a love that comes only once. Sorcia despairs at ever being able to complete her task, but the magic of the fair folk knows no boundaries, and love is the strongest magic of them all. Okay, this is the one it tied with, so I put it as number 6, is Green Rider by Kristen Britton. This is a series I flew through. There are 6 books currently, and I started it, I think, in probably like April of like 2017. I finished it before June of 2017. So like I finished it in like a month, all 6 books, and the 6th book is really, really big. She's working on the 7th one. I follow her on Instagram, and I think she's in, I don't know what stage she is in the edits, but I know she's in the revision editing process. So hopefully soon it comes out because I need to know what happens after it. And I think she's been green-lighted for an 8th one, I think, if I remember correctly. I love it. I love it so much. On her journey home from school after a fight that will surely lead to her expulsion, Kerrigan Gladian ponders her uncertain future. As she trudges through the immense green-cloaked forest, her thoughts are interrupted by the clattering of hooves as a galloping horse bursts out from the woods. The rider is slumped over his mount's neck, impaled by 2 black-shafted arrows. As the young man lies dying on the road, he tells Kerrigan he is a Green Rider, one of the legendary messengers of the King of Sakaridia. I can never say that word right. Sakaridia. Before he dies, he begs Kerrigan to deliver the life or death message he bears to King Zachary. When she reluctantly agrees, he makes her swear on his sword to complete his mission, whispering with his dying breath, "Beware the Shadow Man." Taking on the golden-winged horse brooch that is a symbol of the Green Riders, Kerrigan is swept into a world of deadly danger and complex magic, her life forever changed. Compelled by forces she cannot understand, Kerrigan is accompanied by the silent specter of the fallen messenger and hounded by dark beings bent on seeing that the message and its reluctant carrier never reach their destination. Number 5, which is The Poppy War. The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang was a read this year. I've also read The Dragon Republic, and I will say that this one might actually go higher on my list after I read The Burning God, which is the last book in the trilogy. I have not read it yet. It came out a couple weeks ago, but I was reading Rhythm of War, and I'm nervous to start The Burning God because I have a bad feeling bad things are going to happen, because this is one of those books where bad things happen all the time. Mainly it's the main character's fault, which is why it's a well-written book and why I enjoyed it so much. When Rin aced the Keju, the empire-wide test to find the most talented youth to learn at the academies, it was a shock to everyone. To the test officials who couldn't believe a war orphan from Brewster Province could pass without cheating, to Rin's guardians who believed that they finally had been able to marry her off and further their criminal enterprise, to Rin herself, who realized she was finally free of the servitude and despair that made up her daily existence. That she got into Singard, the most elite military school in Nakan, was even more surprising. But surprises aren't always good, because a dark-skinned peasant girl from the south is not an easy thing at Singard. Targeted from the outset by rival classmates for her color, poverty, and gender, Rin discovers she possesses a lethal unearthly power, an aptitude for the nearly mythical art of shamanism. Exploring the depths of her gift with the help of a seemingly insane teacher and psychoactive substances, Rin learns that gods long thought dead are very much alive, and that mastering control over those powers could mean more than just surviving school. While the Nikara Empire is at peace, the Federation of Mugen still lurks across the Narrow Sea. The militarily advanced Federation occupied Nakan for decades after the First Poppy War and only barely lost the continent in the Second. And while most of the people are complacent to go about their lives, a few are aware that a third Poppy War is just a spark away. Rin's shamanic powers may be the only way to save her people, but as she finds out more about the god that has chosen her, the vengeful Phoenix, she fears that winning the war may cost her humanity, and that it may already be too late. Number 4, we have Sabriel by Garth Nix. This is also one of my old nostalgic favorites from high school, and this is one I regularly reread, about 1 or 2 every couple years. I reread the entire series. Golden Hand came out a couple years ago. I can't remember exactly when. So that's the last time I actually read through the series. I'm not a fan of the later books in the series. Golden Hand, I liked how it ended Laeriel's story, but it wasn't as enjoyable as Sabriel, because Sabriel is kind of more of a standalone. But the characters, the intriguing magic system, and just the mysteriousness of the world itself, because Sabriel doesn't know a whole lot about it either, and she's kind of learning, even though she was born there. But allow me to read the back of the blurb, or back cover blurb here, so you can kind of understand what I'm saying. Ever since she was a tiny child, Sabriel has lived outside the walls of the Old Kingdom, away from the random power of free magic, and away from the dead, who won't stay dead. But now her father, the mage Aporson, is missing, and to find him, Sabriel must cross back into that world. Though her journey begins alone, she soon finds companions. Maggot, whose seemingly harmless feline form hides a powerful and perhaps malevolent spirit, and Touchstone, a young charter mage, long imprisoned by magic, now free in body but still trapped by painful memories. With threats on all sides and only each other to trust, the three must travel deep into the Old Kingdom toward a battle that will pit them against the true forces of life and death and bring Sabriel face to face with her own hidden destiny. So the top 3, they actually changed when I actually did. I put them in order, the different order, just because I was like, okay, let me see where I would put them if I don't actually use like a system. And then when I used a system, and the numbers came out where this one moved from number 2 to number 3. So I was like, what? But it's fine. So the top 3 have slight spoilers here just for other future videos for me. These 3 books have my favorite characters of all time. I'm going to do a video about my top 5 fantasy characters, and each of these books in the top 3 have at least one character on that list. And so I love them so much. And I feel like it's a very emotional response for me. It's not really a logical reason why I love them. I just connected either with the characters or the world or the magic system, plot, whatever was going on in that book. And that was just, it hit all of my fantasy boxes. I guess I'll put it that way. So the reason I really like this one in particular is because the characters and relationships between those characters really are strong, and especially between the 2 main characters, Royce and Hadrian. Hint, hint, if you can figure out what it is right now. And their friendship is just so fantastic. So if you haven't been able to guess by that not so subtle hint, number 3 is the whole entire series of the Right Era Revelations. Their first book is The Crown Conspiracy, and it's actually in an omnibus edition by Orbit called The Theft of Swords, along with Avampartha. Those are the first 2 books in the series. There are 6 single books, but there are 3 omnibus editions of it that you can find on Amazon. I will link Theft of Swords down below, not The Crown Conspiracy, which is technically the first book. So I choose the entire series. All top 3 of these books in the top 3, yeah, they have all made me cry in some way, shape, or fashion. And whoop, Right Era is not without its tears. So I loved it. I'm going to go ahead and read the back cover blurb. I'm sorry, I can just gush and gush and gush. You don't want to hear me just gush all over it or blabber, because that's what I'm doing. Royce Melbourne, a skilled thief, and his mercenary partner Hadrian Blackwater make a profitable living carrying out dangerous assignments for conspiring nobles until they are hired to pilfer a famed sword. What appears to be just a simple job finds them framed for the murder of the king and trapped in a conspiracy that uncovers a plot far greater than the mere overthrow of a tiny kingdom. Can a self-serving thief and an idealistic swordsman survive long enough to unravel the first part of an ancient mystery that has toppled kings and destroyed empires? And so begins the first tale of treachery and adventure, sword fighting and magic, myth and legend. I love this one. And one thing I think is fascinating about the Right Era Revelations is that Michael J. Sullivan, he self-published the first, I don't know how many, and then Orbit kind of picked it up because he was a bestseller. And I think it might have been the last 6th one that was actually published, not self-published, I think. I might be completely wrong on that. But he writes the entire series first before he even publishes it. He writes the entire series so he can go through and add the foreshadowing in that way. And I am actually rereading this currently at the filming of this, and I'm on book 5. I'm on book 4. And I've now picked up, it's my first time I've reread it, and I'm picking up on a lot of foreshadowing, and it's just like kind of mind-blowing just how much foreshadowing there is, and I kind of love it. I am all there for it. That's all I'm gonna say. Yeah, so this is a solid number 3. I did have it at number 2, and then the ranking system pushed it to number 3. Now, the book that beat it out is definitely worth a number 2 spot. I had trouble choosing where to put these 3, so like, I get it. Here we go. Here is number 2. And that would be Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. Era 1 specifically, because I have not finished Era 2. I've only read the first one. I loved it, but Mistborn Era 1 is so good. It is so good. It was the first Brandon Sanderson book I actually read, and I didn't like it at first because it takes a little bit to get into. You're introduced to Kelsier, who is in the first kind of, I think it might even be a prologue, and you're not sure exactly what's going on, and then you go and you follow Vin, who's the main character. She has the main point of view throughout the books, even though there are different points of view throughout these books. And I wasn't really connecting a lot with the first couple chapters. But I was like, I heard this was good. I'm going to keep pushing. And I ended up getting, I think, to chapter 10. And by the time I got to chapter 10, I was gone, hook, line, and sinker. Because this world, the characters, the magic system especially, and if you know anything about Brandon Sanderson, you've probably heard of his magic systems. This one is no exception to that. And what I think is the best aspect of the Mistborn book specifically are the plot twists. The first book is basically like a trilogy, in my opinion, of a book which I expected what happens at the end to happen at the end of book 3. It doesn't, and so he continues to just knock it out of the park with books 2 and 3. And book 3 makes me sob. I have not reread it because I'm scared I'm gonna sob again. I reread the first Mistborn. I've read the first book a couple of times now, but I'm just too nervous to read books 2 and 3 because I know it's gonna, I'm even like thinking about it just kind of makes me want to tear up. But anyway, I'll read the back cover blurb. For 1,000 years the ash fell and no flowers bloomed. For 1,000 years the skaa slaved in misery and lived in fear. For 1,000 years the Lord Ruler, the sliver of infinity, reigned with absolute power and ultimate terror, divinely invincible. Then, when hope was so long lost that not even its memory remained, a terribly scarred, heartbroken half-skaa rediscovered it in the depths of the Lord Ruler's most hellish prison. Kelsier snapped and found himself the powers of a mistborn. A brilliant thief and natural leader, he turned his talents to the ultimate caper, with the Lord Ruler himself as the mark. Kelsier recruited the underworld's elite and the smartest and most trustworthy allomancers, each of whom shares one of his many powers, and all of whom relish a high-stakes challenge. Only then does he reveal his ultimate dream, not just the greatest heist in history, but the downfall of the divine despot. But even with the best criminal crew ever assembled, Kel's plan looks more like the ultimate long shot, until luck brings a ragged girl named Vin into his life. Like him, she's a half-skaa orphan, but she's lived a much harsher life. Vin has learned to expect betrayal from everyone she meets and gotten it. She will have to learn to trust if Kel is to help her master powers of which she had never dreamed. The saga dares to ask the simple question, what if the hero of prophecy fails? Yeah, really good plot twist character. It's a heist story. It has a ragtag crew. Like, it has everything you could possibly want in a fantasy story. And it's a really cool world that's different from what you read in normal Tolkien-esque fantasies, in my opinion, because you have this, it's a dirty, gritty world with ash literally falling from the sky. So anyway, I'm going to take a second. I'm going to put some honorable mentions on the screen here so you can read them. I'm not going to go into why I like them or didn't put them on the top 10 list, but they're going to be on the screen so you can kind of see some other recommendations. I will also put those down below, the links to those books, if you are interested. And so I'm going to reveal my number 1. It was close in a sense where the top 3 were close in number, but number 1 edged out by a full point, Mistborn, and so it deserves its spot at number 1. And if you know me at all, you probably have already guessed what it is, which would be dun, 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 the Stormlight Archive, the entire series by Brandon Sanderson. This series, it was probably tied, honestly, dead even with Mistborn and even Rhaenyra until Rhythm of War came out. And I can't wait to read the 5th in the series, which we'll get to that whenever that comes out. But Rhythm of War really just it was just the 1-2 punch that it killed everything on my list. The level of detail that goes into that world building is just kind of mind-blowing in the sense. I know Brandon Sanderson, I think, worked 10 plus years on it before he started writing. I might be wrong with that fact, but it shows that he took a lot of time to world build this. The characters are real. I connect with all of them just in some way. And Rhythm of War, without any spoilers, there's one character I didn't care too much about, but in Rhythm of War, they became one of my favorite characters in the series. And the fact that Brandon Sanderson could do that was just amazing to me. And I love this book to death, this series to death. And if you have one book on the list, if you can only choose one, I definitely choose this one, unless you really don't like high epic fantasy with a lot of magic, I guess. I guess that might be why you wouldn't like it, but I don't know why you listen to this video if you don't like magic and stuff and fantasy or something. I'm just rambling now. I'm going to go ahead and read the back cover blurb for The Way of Kings. Roshar is a world of stone and storms. Uncanny tempests of incredible power sweep across the rocky terrain so frequently they have shaped ecology and civilization alike. Animals hide in shells, trees pull in branches, and grass retracts into the soilless ground. Cities are built only where the topography offers shelter. It has been centuries since the fall of the 10 consecrated orders known as the Knights Radiant, but their shard blades and shard plate remain, mystical swords and suits of armor that transform ordinary men into near invincible warriors. Men trade kingdoms for shard blades. Wars were fought for them and won by them. One such war rages on a ruined landscape called the Shattered Plains. There, Kaladin, who traded his medical apprenticeship for a spear to protect his little brother, has been reduced to slavery. In a war that makes no sense, where 10 armies fight separately against a single foe, he struggles to save his men and fathom the leaders who consider them expendable. Bright Lord Dalinar Kholin commands one of those other armies. Like his brother, the late king, he is fascinated by an ancient text called the Way of Kings. Troubled by overpowering visions of ancient times in the Knights Radiant, he has begun to doubt his own sanity. Across the ocean, an untrained young woman named Shallan seeks to train under an eminent scholar and notorious heretic, Dalinar's niece, Yasna. Though she genuinely loves learning, Shallan's motives are less than pure. As she plans a daring theft, her research for Yasna hints at secrets of the Knights Radiant and the true cause of the war. The result of over 10 years of planning, writing, and world building. I was right, it was 10. The Way of Kings is but the opening movement of the Stormlight Archive, a bold masterpiece in the making. Speak again the ancient oaths. Life before death, strength before weakness, journey before destination, and return to men the shards they once bore. The Knights Radiant must stand again. So yeah, that is it for my top 10 fantasy series of all time. That's open to change, especially since I'll start reading some new ones this year. Hopefully I'm getting some for Christmas. I'm filming this video right before I asked for a ton of books for Christmas. So let's hope, cross your fingers. I found some new ones because I'm always up for it. And if you have any good suggestions, or if you agree or disagree, or you have other ones that you would add to your list, put them down in the comments below because I'm always looking for more books to read. In the meantime, you can check out my website at www.allieernest.com, or you can find me on Instagram at allieernestwrites. And I post my writing stuff. I also post reading stuff as well. I will see you guys in the next video. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.